They're going to even this series at 1 game apiece. This crowd, very few have left.
So know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey, cool title YouTuber dude, but the Heat aren't actually going to make any changes, and you don't think they are either. Wrong. I genuinely think that with the way the season gone, especially the end of the season, looking at the roster as a whole, looking at the Eastern Conference as a whole, the Miami Heat are not going to look remotely the same next season. Now, interestingly, it's a good start. Now, interestingly, they could bring back basically the entirety of the roster. All the key players are under contract for next season. They've got Haywood Highsmith as a free agent, and Kevin Love and Josh Richardson both have player options. And there's a couple of other guys, Patty Mills, DeLon Wright, important playoff guy, DeLon Wright. Those guys are also obviously unrestricted free agents. DeLon Wright, they signed in the middle of the season. But for the most part, as you can see, they can bring back the same roster next year. They're not looking forward to any, big new extensions, except for the fact that Caleb Martin's going to need a new deal here in like 2 years. We're going to talk about the Jimmy Butler thing later. Just don't worry about that for right now. Other than that, they've got guys pretty much signed long-term, which is nice. The downside is, they just weren't very good this year. And obviously we know with the Heat, that's always kind of a relative term. Like, they're known for making deep runs in the playoffs despite not being good in the regular season most of those years. And they're hurt a lot of time during the year. They don't really prioritize the regular season. The problem is being hurt a lot in the regular season happened to also translate in the postseason this year, obviously with Jimmy Butler being hurt. Even with them fully healthy though, I think the Celtics team is significantly better than them. Even with some of the issues Boston has had with Miami in the past, they were always still going to lose this series. Which is why, by the way, yes, I'm wearing the exact same shirt in today's video that I was in yesterday's video because I was fully confident that the Heat were going to lose, so I recorded the video before the game even started. I feel pretty good about that one. Now, if the Heat did want to keep the whole group together, their options this offseason in terms of improvement are not great. They don't have any cap space. They've got all these guys signed to these long-term deals. Some of them not the best contracts you could possibly have, and they have no control over their 2025 or their 2027 first-round pick. One of those as a result of the Terry Rozier trade, which they made in the middle of the season. So if you think that maybe the Heat would just run it back with this group, add a couple of guys and figure it out later, their options for doing so are not fantastic. And generally speaking, as a team, I do think the Heat can be good still with this group. I mean, we've seen that over the last couple of years. They've been one of the most consistent teams in the entire conference. The problem is the East was as wide open this year, except for the 1 seed, as basically any conference we've ever had. I mean, no other team even got to 50 wins this year, and the Heat still ended up in the play-in game. Yes, that had to do with injuries. Yes, that had to do with a lot of other stuff, but also, even when they were healthy, they weren't as good as the Heat teams of the past couple of years, and that is a massive, massive concern. Yes, they added Jaime Jaquez, who is good and is going to continue to help them moving forward, and Tyler Hero should continue to improve. Bam should continue to improve. I don't know that that's going to be enough for them anymore, and given how bitter the end to the season was for them, it really feels like changes are coming. And one of those changes is probably they got to bring back Udonis Haslem, right? I mean, that was the missing piece. They need this guy. If you go back and look throughout the history of the Miami Heat, the last handful of years, there's one thing missing between these results and all of these results. I'm just saying. But realistically, when you look at the Heat roster, I think it's pretty clear that they're in a position to make some significant changes because Jimmy Butler's 34 years old. He's got an interesting contract situation coming up. Bam's really good, but as it says in my notes, he's not a one. Obviously, y'all can tell these videos are not scripted. Sometimes the notes only make sense to me. And to me, if you're going to look at the roster and think about significant changes, the place to start is with Tyler Hero, because I said this at the time that they made the Terry Rozier trade. That move felt like two different things for me. One, it felt like obviously injury insurance in case Hero got hurt as he did last year during the postseason, or as he did this year. Jimmy Butler got hurt. They wanted a little bit more offense, and they certainly could have used it. Unfortunately, Rozier was hurt as well. But I said this at the time of the trade. It felt like, yes, insurance for this year, trying to help them push a little bit more towards being competitive this season, but also opens up the possibility of trading Tyler Hero in the offseason. We could talk about the overall value of Tyler Hero, and that's fine, but as a player, Terry Rozier can do a lot of the things that Tyler Hero can do, and ultimately those two guys together are a little bit redundant. They both kind of fill that not going to be super efficient, but can randomly drop 30 on any night, and then sometimes they can come off the bench and score really well. Sometimes they can start that flexible, spark plug scoring option that fits really well alongside Jimmy Butler, that fits really well alongside Jaime Jaquez, that fits really well alongside Bam Adebayo. I really did that twice. That's what Terry Rozier was brought in to be, and it was very interesting to me because I was like, hey, maybe they'll actually trade Tyler Hero now. And if there's one massive move, massive depending on your opinion of Tyler Hero, that the Heat could actually realistically, legitimately make this offseason, I think a Tyler Hero trade is that move. Like I said, they don't have control over their 2025 or their 2027 first-round picks, but they do have a couple of other firsts that they could trade if they wanted to. They've talked openly about the fact that they want to add another star to the roster, presumably at this point alongside the timeline of someone like Bam Adebayo rather than someone like Jimmy Butler, because they tried that last offseason with Dame and with Bradley Beal. Didn't get either of those guys. And so now they're probably going to be looking at what can we turn the Tyler Hero spot in our roster into from a star perspective, adding first-round picks to it. How can we improve that spot? The obvious name that's going to come up here is going to be Donovan Mitchell, right? Depending on how the season ends in Cleveland, what happens there, his name is going to be thrown out there for a ton of other teams. And I think that that is a realistic option for Miami if they had more stuff to trade. I know that Donovan Mitchell is going to be an impending free agent, and we understand that if he really wants to go to a particular place, he has the ability to potentially force his way there. But we thought that about Dame last offseason. We thought that about Bradley Beal last offseason as well, although Beal, for some reason, had a no-trade clause, and Dame was old and on a massive contract. So it's not the exact same thing. But essentially, it's not a guarantee that just because if, in a scenario, Donovan Mitchell's like, hey, I really want to go to Miami, there's no guarantee that he actually would get a chance to go to Miami. I feel like I'm one of the few people on YouTube that people probably watch at like 0.75 times speed, not 2x speed. I just get excited. I don't know. I just talk fast. And the idea of Donovan Mitchell on the Heat, alongside Bam Adebayo, alongside Jimmy Butler, that's really interesting, really intriguing to me. And I kind of hope that it happens because I feel like that gives Donovan Mitchell a really good chance of potential high-level success in the postseason. If that was to happen, I can guarantee you Jaime Jaquez is not in the trade. The Heat are going to do the thing that they always do where they're like, we really value this player. They did it with Tyler Hero for years. They're not going to include Jaime Jaquez in any deal. So if you're a Cavs fan, if you're one of these other teams out there that thinks they're going to trade their star and you're hoping to get Jaime Jaquez, it's not going to happen. But here's the other problem for Miami. If you look at all the potential star options they could add in the offseason, it's basically Donovan Mitchell and not a whole lot else. Like there's some other potential options here. Like people are going to talk about the possibility of LeBron signing the minimum contract or mid-level exception as a free agent. That's not going to happen. Like Trae Young's probably available. Doesn't really seem like a Heat guy. DeJounte Murray, maybe. If the Bucks completely implode as we're recording this video, I'm not sure if they have yet or not. Maybe Dame is available once again. But other than that, like that's basically it. I mean, you could talk about maybe Devin Booker or Kevin Durant. Like that gets really, really crazy really quickly if Phoenix wanted to try and tear some things down there. But apart from that, it's not all that great. I do still think, though, that they're going to aggressively explore trading away Hero. The other thing, though, that people aren't really discussing about this Miami Heat team, and I referenced it at the beginning. You see this up here? That's Jimmy Butler's contract. And I feel like for a while we've talked about Jimmy Butler's contract as this massive deal that isn't going to look as good as he ages. That's fine. I'm worried about that green part right there. Jimmy Butler technically could be on an expiring contract this season. He could opt out and become a 2025 unrestricted free agent. Now, granted, he would have to turn down $52 million in that year in order to become an unrestricted free agent. And as good as Jimmy Butler is, I'm not positive that he's still going to be a max player in the offseason of 2025, even as much as teams really want to go out and try and add stars. He probably is, but I'm not positive. And of course, you got the injury stuff as well. And like as stable as things kind of seem when you look at the cap sheet for the Heat, they could just bring everybody back, hope for internal improvement, and just be the same team they've been the last couple of seasons. But actually, in like 18 months, Jimmy Butler could just be a free agent and leave. Now, obviously, they could sign him to an extension. There's a lot of other things they could do to try and mitigate that, but it's just an interesting parallel to where they've been the last couple of seasons, where it's felt like, yeah, they have time to figure it out. They have time to add other pieces. They have time to kind of see where these guys go and where they progress. That doesn't really feel like that's the case anymore. And I don't even know necessarily if like the Heat would be struggling to do anything if Jimmy did decide to leave. It's a very complicated situation, but it is something that has to be mentioned. And it's also just weird because like if I absolutely had to give an opinion right now on whether Jimmy Butler would accept the $52 million player option in the summer 2025, I have no idea if he would or not. But if I had to guess, whatever happens this offseason, the version of the Miami Heat that we just watched this past year and the year before, they will not be the same team this year or the following season, whether that be because of a Hero trade or because of possibly Jimmy Butler being an unrestricted free agent, being on a different team. But there's always one way they could just fix everything. Probably be better than Thomas Bryant.